30% of carbon dioxide produced by humans is absorbed into the ocean, but we don't know what the effect of the consequent change in pH will be. Scientists from NIWA and the University of Otago are studying how it might affect shellfish species and their populations, and ultimately what effect it might have on our marine farm industry.
The chemistry department here at the University of Otago does a lot of research in marine chemistry, and there's been more awareness lately about the issues of ocean acidification, about how our oceans are becoming more acidic as more CO2 dissolves into them. So we've just really been looking at the impacts on New Zealand. We were curious what they would be. The oceans worldwide are becoming more acidic, but the impact is going to be different in different areas. For example, CO2 dissolves much more readily in cold water, so we expect the polar and subpolar regions to be more quickly impacted by ocean acidification. So calcifying organisms are expected to be pretty hard hit by ocean acidification. So some of the ones we're especially interested in are Coraline algae, which is a calcifying algae, but also things like paua, oysters, and mussels. Those are kind of the end point of our projects. We want to start growing some of these organisms that are of economic importance to New Zealand. Because we think that as the oceans become more and more acidic, there's going to be less free carbonate available for these organisms to build their shells. This is an automated culture tank that I've built in collaboration with our partners at NIWA. There are two components to it. First are the mixing tanks here. Each of these individual 10 tanks are how we control the pH. So that's what we control quite often so we can mimic the pH changes along the coastline anywhere in New Zealand. It drips at about 2 mils per minute into our culture tanks. So these are designed for small organisms like Coraline algae or kinna larvae. Right now we just have some fragments in there of paua and mussels. The control system is back here. This is where we have our pH-sensitive dye. We take a little bit of seawater either out of our mixing tank or out of our culture tank. We mix it with this pH-sensitive dye, and we can use the color of that to determine the pH. And then it's sort of got a loop feedback system, so depending on what pH we measure, we can adjust the pH of the seawater and let it drip down at a new pH for the next round of measurements. And it can run indefinitely as long as we have a supply to seawater, so we can start doing really long-term studies, for weeks or even months at a time. One thing we need to do as part of this study is start looking at what the pH is at different parts of the country. And then the system is designed so that we can change the pH in each individual culture tank every 5 minutes. So what this lets us do is really mimic these small natural variations.
Scientist Katrina Hurd is looking closely at the impact that acidification has on seaweed and shellfish.
There is the possibility that they can adapt to changing pH and the more acidic oceans. That's the research we need to do. We need to find out the timescales over which they may be susceptible and over which they may adapt. So perhaps if the change in pH isn't too fast, they may be slowly able to adapt to it. So this whole rock is covered with Coraline algae, and you can see the red colour here, the calcified surface, and along this edge here, that's the new growth. You can see it's a white line where you've got one species of Coraline algae overgrowing another one there. Now, some mussels here. Yeah. Carbon dioxide is one of the gases that's responsible for climate change and global warming, and it's the same gas that is responsible for the decrease in pH and making the oceans more acidic. So although they're not directly linked, there is a correlation between the Earth getting warmer and the oceans becoming more acidic, and they're both stresses on the organisms.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.